I want. Awesome sauce. Hello, everyone. This is Awesome Sauce Radio. I am your host, Blind Adam Wonders, the comic pimp. I thank you for all joining us tonight. Before we get started, I'd like to thank a sponsor or two. I'd like to thank the Big Apple Comic Con. Big Apple Comic Con is returning us sometime in December, I believe. So go to www.bigapplecc.com and tell them why I'm sent you. Also, want to give a huge shout out to the Exotica Expo, www.exoticaexpo.com. They return to the Miami Convention Center, July 14th, 15th, and 16th, I believe. Go to exoticaexpo.com for all your details. And I just want to give a shout out to my homie JV Wheels. Thank you for editing that video for me. Much love, and I'll see you on the show tomorrow night, as we do have 3 episodes this week. Now that all that's out of the way, we're ready to testify. Because today we have a guest I've been wanting to get for a long, long time. He's legendary in the realm of wrestling podcasting. Out Wrestling News Live, and God rest his soul, JSK, and of course his partner in crime, Trey, the Trey Dog. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I was a big fan of w.n.l, and
I like hearing that from people even today. Like, well, I mean, we'll get into more, newsy stuff later, but it surprises me still to this day how many people will pop up in my Twitter DMs or a Facebook message and be like, hey man, just wanted to see how things are going. I miss hearing you on the radio. And I'm like, wow, people still remember that show.
I got a DM from the Bronx Father out of the blue, and he's like, are you the comic pimp who used to write emails to us? And I'm like, yeah. I used to threaten the British guy used to have sing the Power Rangers theme song.
Crowley.
Yeah.
The fucking foreign kid. That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I still talk to Bronxy every now and then.
I lost touch with him because we became good friends because, we were both involved with podcasting, and we were both visually impaired. So it was nice to have someone to bounce off of every now and then.
He's still pretty active on Facebook, so I'm sure if you went over to Facebook, you'd catch him. He posts over there all the time.
I'll research him out. So basically, can you just tell the audience a little bit more of who you are and actually what you do, both in podcasting and as a radio?
Well, I go by the Trey Dog, and the reason for that is the aforementioned JSK, who's no longer with us, unfortunately. Excuse me. When we met over a girl, that's just what he started calling me. In a life-changing, I don't know where my life would be without, just a few minor things that became major things in my life. I was dating a girl that was a dancer and not a stripper, but like a actual classical trained dancer.
Okay.
Although she could have been a stripper. She was probably at that point in time, and I'm trying to think. I won't say her name. I probably said it in the past, but I won't say her name. She's married. We've spoke somewhat recently, just to check with each other and see how each other was. But she was the hottest thing I'd ever dated in my life. And I didn't really have a lot going on in Tulsa when I was living in Tulsa. My best friends and I had lived together for years and bartended together in different places for years and just partied like rock stars for years. And then I was the lead singer of a band in Tulsa. And that's really all I had going for me. It was a bartending gig and playing in the band. And Miranda came to me. That was her name. I wasn't going to say it, but Miranda came to me and she said, "Hey, I want to try to go to Branson, and I want to be a dancer in a show." And I didn't know anything about it. And I said, "Well, shit, I got nothing else going on. Let's go." So we went, and she auditioned for several shows, and that was on a weekend trip. And by the time we got back home on Sunday, back to her parents' house, her mother told her that she had like 6 callbacks. So we were like, God, okay, well, shit, I guess we're gonna load up the truck and move to Branson. So that's what we did. And I remember this. I remember this to this day. Of course, we were going down there to support her so she could be a dancer for one of the many shows that they have there in Branson. But what was I going to do? I had no idea. She asked me on the way down there. She's like, "What are your plans?" And jokingly, but tongue in cheek, somewhat seriously, I said, "I'm going to find the biggest motherfucker down there and make him my best friend." And I was just joking. I was really just joking. It was just something that came out of my mouth.
Wow.
So a few days go by, and she gets hired by one of the magicians down there to be the girl in the magic show where they cut her in half and do all that shit. And I'm still trying to find something job-wise. And I got a job working at a place called Guitars and Cadillacs as a bartender. And the first night there, they're like, "Just stand back behind whoever I was bartending with." And they were like, "Just watch. Just don't make a drink or two if they're busy, but stay out of the register. Just let them do everything. I just want you to watch." And I was like, "Well, shit, I know what the fuck I'm doing, but okay." So I just sat there and watched. Well, Miranda needed a job because the show hadn't started yet, so they hired her as a cocktail waitress. So she's in like pantyhose and short shorts with her body walking around. And then she comes over to me and she's like, "This dude's been hitting on me all night long, but he's tipping well, so I'm going to continue to serve him beers." And I'm like, "Okay." So she comes back and she gets more drinks and he wants a beer and a shot. So she takes him his beer and a shot. And this goes on throughout the night. And she's like, "Yeah, he's putting on the full court press here. He's trying real hard." And I said, "I tell you what, you take this beer and this shot over to him and you tell him it's from your boyfriend, the bartender over here. And if he wants to talk to me, he can." So this big motherfucker walks over and he's like, "I'm looking for Trey." And I was like, "Oh, fuck." "Yeah, that's me." And this is 100% what he said. He walked over, acted like some kind of Billy Badass, like he was going to just stomp my ass, right? Mm-hmm. And then he says, "Anybody putting his dick in that girl's got my respect. What's up, dude?" And he called me the Trey Dog right away, and it stuck.
And that's how you and Jody met.
That's how we met. That's exactly how we met. And so we became friends. And I only knew him from that interaction. And then, like I said, I was a bartender, so he would come in and get drinks. And, back then, shot for you, shot for me, So we would sit there and drink together while I was working and he was the customer. And then eventually they hired him to do security. So we were there together all the time. And we just became really good friends. Miranda and I had our own apartment. Miranda and I lasted less than 6 months in Branson after lasting like a year and a half in Tulsa. Mm-hmm. But we lasted less than 6 months. A lot of it was my fault, but at the end of the day, it was her fault. And I didn't want to deal with her anymore. So I tell you what, because at first I was going to with my apartment, I was going to kick her out. And I thought, no, because then I'm going to have to deal with her. Excuse me. So I was like, no, I don't want to have to deal with her shit. Jody used to say, JSK, no matter how hot a chick is, some guy somewhere is tired of putting up with her shit. And that's one of the truest statements ever made. And she was extremely hot, and I was extremely tired of putting up with her shit. So I kicked her out, and then I was like, no, I tell you what, you keep the apartment. I'll take my name off the lease. And I literally packed up my car, and I was heading back to Tulsa. But something, and I don't know why, something was telling me to stay. Sorry, I got something stuck in my throat. Something was telling me to stay in Branson, even though I had really no reason to, other than just the few friends that I worked with at the bar and the bar job. I was in the process of putting a new band together. So it was me and a couple of brothers that we were looking for another guitarist and a drummer to put a band together, because I had come from a band in Tulsa. Mm-hmm. So I was in the process of doing that, and that was one of the reasons why I stayed. I won't lie. That was a part of why I stayed. But then I'm sitting in this bar that I never went to. I can't even remember the name of it to this day, but I can see it in my mind. But I can picture the bar and I can picture how it's set up, but I can't remember the name of it. And I'm sitting in this bar and this really smoking hot, half naked chick comes in and sits next to me at the bar. And when I turned to see who she was, it was this chick that was new to the show that my now ex, was a dancer for. And she used to come home and complain and hate this bitch. I mean, she hated her. So the first thing I wanted to do was fuck her because of that. So she starts buying me drinks. I'm starting to buy her drinks. Things are going well, but guess what? I don't have anywhere to go because I'm currently homeless. But I had remembered this one time that I took JSK home from the bar, and he had told me, man, if you ever need anything, if you ever need a place to stay, if anything's ever going down, you come here. You don't have to call, just show up. And I was like, fuck, okay, cool. Pay my tab. I don't remember this girl's name. I could probably remember if I sit and think about it, but it's not really that important to the story. I take her to JSK's house. Knock on the door. He's sitting in what would become my recliner. He's sitting in my recliner, which was right in front of the TV. And he turns and looks over his left shoulder. And the door is one of those doors that's got the glass middle that you can see through.
Okey-doke.
So he can see me, and I'm standing there with this smoking hot chick that's still in her dancing attire from the show. And he's like, okay, what the fuck? So he opens the door. I said, hey, man, I ain't got nowhere to go. And he goes, what happened? I said, well, we'll talk about it later. And he goes, all right, well, there's a bedroom there and a bedroom there. Take your pick. So I took my pick, and it became my bedroom for the next 3 or 4 years. But I went in there. Her and I went in there and did things that I don't think we need to discuss on the show. Then she left.
Yeah, exactly. Even though this is an adult entertainment show, but that's fine. The less details.
You get the idea. Yeah, you get the idea.
Yep.
She performed those same things the next morning and then left. And I woke up, it was probably around 11 o'clock, noon. And I come strolling out of the darkness, and I'm like, oh, God. I walk out. I'm just tore up from the floor up. But something smells good. And I look, and JSK is standing in the kitchen cooking breakfast. So he sets down a plate for me and a plate for him. He sets it on this little island, and he puts me a couple eggs and some bacon on a plate. He puts him some couple eggs and some bacon on a plate. I go in the living room and sit in the recliner. He goes, that's my chair. And I said, well, not anymore, Dane. I'm sitting here. And he just laughed and went over and sat on the couch. And that would be the way we would sit for the next 4 or 5 years until we moved out of that house. But we started talking while we were sitting there. And he said, man, he goes, I don't have to pay rent. I'm just holding this house for the owners until they get back. He said, you're welcome to stay here as long as I'm here. I said, well, shit, that sounds good to me. So I'm not homeless anymore. I'll just stay in that bedroom. He goes, it's all yours. And that's where it started.
Wow.
Wrestling News Live was born out of a love for the Monday Night Wars that he and I shared.
Good old Monday Night Wars.
Yeah, the good days, the good old days. We were working in Branson, and at that time, we were no longer working at the bar. There was a guy that was from Miami, Florida, but he owned two businesses on the 76th Strip there in Branson, which is the main street. And one of them was right in the most popular part of the 76th Strip. Like he had one of the most popular business places, like a little shopping mall that just, I mean, people were in there from open to close. And all he sold was like, little trinkets and little, gifts and like souvenirs. But the big thing was he had a t-shirt press. And he had a whole wall behind the counter of different decals and different things that you could put on a t-shirt and different. He also sold like knockoff Tommy Hilfiger shit and fake Polo by Ralph Lauren shit, but it was fake. I remember that.
Real enough to not be real?
Good enough that people bought it to pretend it was the real thing.
Yeah. Like the Rolexes on Wall Street.
Yeah, so Jody managed the main store for this guy. They needed somebody to work the second store, which was way, way, way less populated business-wise, but busy enough that it was at the very end of the 76th Strip before you started going way out of the way to Silver Dollar City. And I basically ran that store by myself. It was me and a couple of twin sisters that were older than I was. They were about my age that I am now. And that was years ago. So Jody and I would talk all day on the phone back and forth, but he would work at one store and I worked at the other. And if I didn't have something, I sent him to him. And if he didn't have something, he'd send them to me. So I'm sitting in that shop. It just happens to be dead, empty, just me by myself.
Ouch.
And
you tell when it's like that.
Yeah, and it just makes the day seem so long. It just
makes time stand still.
Oh, absolutely.
You're just like looking at the clock being, when the fuck is this day going to end?
Yeah.
Nothing more worse than a dead retail storefront with you being the only one in there.
Right. So I've got on sports radio, the Jock. I remember it was called the Jock in Branson. And this commercial comes on. And the guy's voice, he says, have you ever wanted to host your own talk show or your own radio show or, whatever? And I was like, and I start talking back to the radio and I'm like, well, absolutely I have. Because my friends told me for years, man, you should do radio. You should do radio. And I'm like, they kind of hire their own people. It's really hard to get into the business. And that still holds true. But I wrote down the address, fancast.com. I was like, okay. So I go home, get off work, go home. The first thing I do, go to fancast.com and I start checking it out. And it would be like somebody's first time coming here to StreamYard. It's basically the same concept, the same idea. But back then, you had to pay for it unless you were only going to do like 3 shows a month. Well, we were doing 1 a week. So we ended up taking on a sponsorship from a local hot sauce company.
I remember those ads.
Yeah. And they paid and gave us enough product that we could be on the air on Fancast. And by doing that, we were able to have, all the features that they provided, which was a live chat, an ability for people to call in, stuff like that.
So
and then they had.
I always cut you guys on the archive, man.
They had a a top 20 most listened to shows on the front of their website.
Oh, wow.
And so they would rank by the number of unique users that were in a show. They could tell who had been, listened to the most. And that was our goal, man. That was, we were like, hey, let's do a wrestling show. And he was like, okay, I'm down. I bought the equipment. I bought both of us a headset. I figured out how to make them both hook into the same computer that was on back then, still dial-up internet, believe it or not.
I could not imagine doing a podcast on a dial-up network.
Well, podcast wasn't even a word yet. It wasn't even in the dictionary.
A radio show.
It was called internet radio. There was no such thing as a podcast. So we were like, well, we need a name. And I don't remember how, but Wrestling News Live just came to me. And I said, well, how about Wrestling News Live? We're talking about wrestling. It's news and it's live. And he goes, man, I kind of like that. And I was like, yeah, me too. It sticks. So we called ourselves Wrestling News Live. And the rest is kind of, history. We were off and running. It took us, months on Fancast. We were at number 2 on their most listened to shows for fucking ever. It almost felt like a rib, like they were doing it on purpose. And we were number 2 to a fucking fishing show. And I was like, who the hell listens to a show about fishing? How in the hell is that the most listened to? And then they disappeared. They quit doing their show and disappeared. And I thought, here's our chance. They're retiring from the business. We're gonna move into the number 1 spot. Nope. Some show about poker, some kind of casino poker show took over the number 1 spot that week and held it for another month. And I'm like, what in the hell? And then finally, we overtook the poker show and became the number 1 show on Fancast. And we held on to that for just a little while until they announced that they were shutting the doors and they were no longer going to be able to, be used for us to do a show with. So we had to scramble to find other ways. It's so amazing to me. Like, I was thinking about this just a couple days ago. It's so amazing to me now that it's so easy for people to do what we're doing right now. And while I'm happy that people have the ability to do this, it's amazing how simple this is versus how difficult it was for us before the word podcast was ever born.
Yeah, so I guess this goes to one of my questions. How drastically has it changed from the days of internet radio, to where you had to fight and scratch and claw, to how it is today?
Well, accessibility, 1. Quality, 2. Internet speeds make it so easy and so nice for us to be in high definition while we do this. So that's 2 things that are better. Adam laughs, but this is a true story. I told Adam Martin, I said, I want to take phone calls. And he said, you're fucking crazy. And I said, I'm not worried about it. I was like, I'm just going to get a Nokia brick phone. And it was from, I think, AT&T. I think I had AT&T service. And I was like, I'm going to make it work so that when people call that phone, I can patch them into the show. There was no such thing as Skype. There was no Discord. There was no way to take live phone calls from listeners in your chat and put them through so that the listeners could hear both sides of the conversation. That was the trick. Hearing me reply to a question you didn't hear asked, that was the easy part. But finding a way to make it to where you could hear both the caller and myself and be able to hear and it be clear enough that you could understand both. And we made that work just by going to Radio Shack and buying some different parts and tearing open a brick phone and wiring it to work. I did all that.
Yeah, and you guys had a loyal listener and call-in base each and every week.
Yeah, it was pretty solid. And I really never had any issues with people calling that phone and being like, hey, in the middle of the week, or it was only during the show,
Yeah.
Um,
and ironically, for a while I was friends with a couple of people from the w.n.l.
Yeah.
Bronx Bobber. You guys used to call him the king of pickle fuckers.
Walkie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we both have a mutual love of Star Wars. I used to bother Jeff and Harmony every now and then. So I hope that they're doing well.
They are divorced.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and Jeff is dating somebody else, and I've seen that on Facebook. He may be married. He might be even remarried by now, but I know that he and Harmony got a divorce, and then I just saw Harmony posting yesterday about something, so she's still alive and well, so that's good.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because I know the last time I had any contact with either one of them, she was going through her health issues at that point.
Yeah, she had a few health scares, yeah. So we did all that. And like I said, back then it was ride the wave. So we would ride the wave of Fancast. Fancast would shut its doors, and then I would turn to Adam and say, okay, now we've got to find some new home. And so we would find a new way to bring the show to people through a different medium. Because as soon as one died, there was always another place to go. It just wasn't good enough to, do the show. 1, 2, could I figure out how to make it happen? And 3, would it be good enough for the listeners to listen and actually interact with us? So we just bounced from place to place that would do that because, again, podcasting was not a word. Podcasting didn't become a thing until Wrestling News Live was almost gone. And Wrestling News Live was around for 10 years or more. So, I mean, it was, a long time of struggling. And I remember Skype coming out, and Skype was like, oh, man. But I hate that fucking program.
Skype,
I've hated it ever since.
You don't have to use Skype with adaptive technology for the sight impaired.
Yeah, I can't imagine how bad that.
To the point where I was just, thank God I discovered StreamYard, because it's just easier on an accessibility standpoint.
Right. So, I mean, we did that. We bounced around from place to place. I think the thing there's 2 things. There were 2 things in the history of Wrestling News Live that made the show kind of take off, if you will. One was obviously the Kid Cash incident. That was huge for the show, and its popularity, noticeability. I mean, we got a lot of eyeballs and ears because of that. The other one was I just said fuck it. At the time, audiowrestling.com was the big shit, and every show on that website was actually also on terrestrial radio. So, like, there were shows like Get in the Ring and Monday Night Mayhem and other shows, that were on audiowrestling.com.
It's like a blast from the past just hearing some of those names, because the first wrestling radio show I discovered was WrestleCrap.
Yeah, WrestleCrap was there.
After that, I found you guys.
Yeah, WrestleCrap was there. And these were all shows, for the most part, that were also on terrestrial radio on like an AM station at Sunday night at 9:00 or some weird shit. And turns out what you find out when you investigate that is that those shows paid to be on the air. They didn't get paid to be on the air. They paid the radio station to be on the airwaves. And that looks good when you're going from one place to another and you go, hey, we've been on 97.5 The Bull for 6 years. Well, you were paying for an hour on Sunday nights, but still they were there. So Audio Wrestling was the home for all the heavy hitters, like the main important wrestling radio shows. And I was like, I want to be there. I think our show is every bit as good as theirs. And I know that we are funnier than most of these motherfuckers. So I just said the hell with it. And I guess one of the second biggest things that ever happened to us was I paid Brian from Audio Wrestling to advertise. And by that, I said, I want a Wrestling News Live banner on the front page of audiowrestling.com, and I'll pay for it. So he quoted me a price. I paid for it. And we put Wrestling News Live on audiowrestling.com as a banner long before the show was ever there. We had never even talked about putting the show on that website. Then the Kid Cash incident happened, and we were somebody, and we had a bunch of eyeballs and ears on the show that were new because, T&A Wrestling at the time put out a statement on the front page of their website that said Kid Cash had been let go right after a pay-per-view, and it was due to comments made on the popular wrestling radio show Wrestling News Live.
Can you explain to members of my audience who may only be fans of current wrestling, aka AEW, and current WWE, what the Kid Cash incident was?
Well, it was a Sunday of a pay-per-view for Impact Wrestling. T&A Impact.
Dixie Carter ran the company.
Yep. Jeff Jarrett was there running things for Dixie.
Yep.
It was a Sunday afternoon. Adam calls me and he says, hey, I just got a call from Kid Cash and he wants to come on our show right after the pay-per-view. Okay, sure. What's he want to do? Well, I don't know. He's just got some shit to get off his chest. Okay, we'll do it. We'll bring him in right as soon as the pay-per-view is over. We'll say hello, and he can call right in, and the show's his. We'll let him do whatever he wants to do. So he had wrestled on the card. I don't remember who he wrestled or what was going on at the time. I don't remember. But one of the hottest things that Impact had was America's Most Wanted, and they just happened to be personal friends of ours.
The Cowboy.
Yeah, Cowboy James Storm, Wildcat Chris Harris.
Yep.
They were really, really good friends of mine and JSK's. And Kid Cash didn't like either one of them, professionally or personally. And so he came on the radio on our show and started talking shit about them. And then he talked shit about Jeff Jarrett. And talked shit about the booking committee, and he talked shit about Dixie Carter as an owner, and said things about a woman that you couldn't say on radio these days because you would get canceled. He did. He got canceled.
Yep.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, I can't remember the quote, but it was something to where he said something about James Storm, and I said, well, I like him. And he goes, well, I think he licks ass. I remember that.
Sounds like something Kid Cash would say.
And then when it was all over, he thanked me because he was like, usually when I start getting lippy with people, they back off. He goes, you just bowed up. He goes, I thought that was great. I loved it. Well, it turns out he was doing it on purpose because he wanted to be released from Impact. He had a deal waiting on him from WWE, so he took it.
So
he had to get fired first.
That he went into WWE right around the time of the first ECW pay-per-view, then probably?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yep.
But yeah, he wanted to be fired so he could sign somewhere else. So they let him go. And like I said, when they put on the front page of their website, Kid Cash has been terminated. We wish him the best in his future endeavors due to comments made on the popular Wrestling News Live radio show. Well, then people had to find out who the fuck we were and what did he say, because they didn't say what he said. They just said comments made. So as soon as that was out in the fucking masses, our audience tripled or quadrupled in overnight. But with anything else, you know, it's like getting raided by a big streamer nowadays if you're on Twitch or Kick like I am every night. You know, you get somebody to raid you and they bring you this huge audience. That's a blessing, but you've got to be able to keep them. So now the task is, we've got all these new listeners. Can we keep them? Can we make the show entertaining enough that they stay? And most of them did. It looked, you know, looking back on it now.
Yeah, because also around the time you started getting a lot more, T&A Impact interviews too.
Yeah,
I remember my first time of getting to learn about like James Storm and Bobby Roode and those guys, like behind the scenes, as far as old classic shoot interview type style stuff. Wisdom Wrestling News Live.
Those are good times, man. There was a time for the show. It's really nice when you think back from the position that I was in, where I was the host and the founder, but I also did all the behind the scenes work until Adam really got to where he did a lot of stuff. But for the most part, I did a lot of the, if not all, the behind the scenes work. And that meant calling companies and dealing with, you know, people in PR and trying to get interviews. And I remember the different phases. There was the beginning phase where nobody knew who we were. Nobody knew who we were. Nobody, wanted to put big talent on the show because they didn't know what we were going to do or what we were going to say, or if we had shitty microphone quality, or, they didn't know. So they would give you somebody like, I think our first guest was like Julio De Niro from T&A.
Wow.
So yeah, you interview your Julio De Niros, and then you interview your Jasmine St. Clairs.
Wait, you had Jasmine, that twat?
Yeah, she hit on me during the show. That was pretty funny.
We had her booked around that time period for a comic book convention that took place in a church.
Whew.
And
did she catch on fire?
The next month, the promoter's like, "We're no longer at the church. We're now at the New Yorker hotel." And I'm like, "Is it because we booked Jasmine St. Clair?" He's like, "Yep."
Yeah, she was a wild one. So we had the two of them. And then I don't even remember how this happened. God, and I can't even think of his name, but we had one of the guys off Tough Enough. And I can't remember who he was. But he was extremely popular at the time. At the time, it was a big get. And for some reason, he called me Buttercup. And it stuck. Yeah. So whenever he would call into the show, and we'd had him on like 2 or 3 times, he would call me Buttercup. I can't remember the guy's name.
I remember, and the only season I really watched Tough Enough was season 1.
I think it was the first season, but I can't remember. Anyway, so we had that guy on. And then the next thing, we had, I really can't remember. But anyway, the guests from Impact started getting better. And then it got to a point where we would have to call in and ask for somebody. And then it got to a point where I didn't even have to do that. Like, whoever was in charge, and they went through multiple people at the position at Impact, whoever was in charge of setting up interviews, they would just book me 2 or 3 guests, and they would just call me and say, "Okay, I've got you down for Billy Gunn, Jeff Jarrett and Monty Brown or some shit like that. And you just go, okay, cool. And then you would get in touch with all three of them and say, okay, we need you to call this number. And I would give them that Skype number to our show because we had to pay for an actual phone number from Skype. We would give them the number so that they could call into that number and we would put them on live. And so we did that for years and years and years. And then they hired some new dickhead that didn't like me. And I'm having old man brain farts right now. But
that's fine. I hate when those happen.
Yeah, but he basically.
I think we're about almost the same age, so when they happen, they happen hard.
I will be 48 tomorrow.
Happy almost birthday. I will be 50 in October. So
there you go. Yes. So I can't remember his name. Something Ross. Anyway, I get a phone call from Adam one day. Well, you finally did it, Trey. I said, what I finally do now? You're going to have to be more specific. And he's like, well, you pissed off this guy at T&A that's the new head booker of people and talent relations or whatever. And he says, if you can't stop cussing on the show, he's not going to give you any more guests. And I said, so you mean to tell me that some dickhead from T&A thinks he's going to come in here and tell me how to do my show that I've been doing for almost 8 years at this point? He can suck a fart out of my ass. How about that? Quote me and tell him that.
All right. I'm going to have my producer clip that. That's going to go at the beginning of every show from now on.
So he calls me back and he says, well, yep, we're done. We're never getting another T&A guest again. And I said, I've already got the entire roster saved in my phone. I don't need that dude. So I called the guy up. I was like, what is your deal with me, dude? What have I ever done to you? And he was like, you haven't ever done anything to me, but you're unprofessional. We're looking for bigger and better things and blah, blah, blah. We're going to be on bigger and better shows, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, I can't remember how it all ended, but the last thing I said was, I don't need you, fuckhead. And I hung up on him. And then you fast forward to Bound for Glory in Detroit. And I'm sitting at the bar with Jim Cornette, James Storm, Kevin Nash, and I want to say Don West.
I God rest his soul.
Rest his soul. And we're sitting there having
one of my inspirations that helped me get to where I got
such a good dude, man. I'll tell you my favorite Don West thing in a minute. We're sitting there. It was from that night, actually. We're sitting there doing shots. And I can't think of this fucking guy's name, but he was such a pain in the ass. He comes walking in and he says, Storm. And Storm turns around and says, hey, and then calls him by his name, which then triggers in my head. That's the motherfucker that told me I'd never have a guest again. And here I am drinking in the middle of their talent pool. And I reached over and said, I told you, motherfucker, I didn't need you. Cheers. And that was the last time I ever heard of that guy.
In real life, how much of the character is in the actual person of James Storm when it came to drinking?
Oh, he's very much. There's not much difference between the guy you see on TV and the man that goes home to his wife and kids.
All right, because imitating James Storm helped me get through a school for the blind when my sight first started getting worse.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of years ago.
Really?
It gets frustrating sometimes. And the first 2 days of learning how to cook, was a real pain in the ass for me.
Yeah, I can't cook and I have sight.
And then I watched a James Storm promo and the theme song, Sorry About Your Damn Luck, stuck in my head. And I was learning how to make a grilled cheese, and I said, grilled cheese, when I slipped it, I said, "Sorry about your fucking luck."
There you go.
And
There
then
you go.
the teacher is just like, "Watch you. You're doing, man. You're actually getting this, but watch your mouth."
He called me one night. We were T&A was in town. And for some reason I can't remember what was going on. I remember where I was working, so I think it was a work issue, but I couldn't go. I couldn't go to the event. And I had told him through Twitter DM that I wasn't going to be able to make it. And that was I thought that was the end of it. And then my phone rang at like 11 p.m. one night. I'm like, what the fuck? And I answered it, and it wasn't him calling from his phone, so I didn't know who it was. But he was like, "Hey, man." I was like, "What's up, dude?" He was like, "Where you at?" And I said, "I'm sitting at my apartment." He was like, "You need to get your ass down to Toby Keith's." Toby Keith's? At the casino? Yeah, man. Okay. So I went. We hung out there at Toby Keith's. And then there was a time where they came into town and I couldn't go, and he called and they were at a Taco Bell by the airport. So what the fuck? So I went and met him at a Taco Bell and just sat and had fucking Taco Bell. That's the story. We just sat and ate Taco Bell, and then we went back to the hotel and they were watching, I guess, one of the more recent episodes of Impact in the lobby or something. So there was a lot of the wrestlers in the lobby watching that. But those were about the last two times I hung out with Storm. Now, the times before that, we got some really crazy, not for me to tell stories about here on the radio shit. But
yeah, exactly.
I will tell you this.
On my door one day and like super kicking me in the face.
I will tell you this. And James was not involved in this. James had already called it a night. But I will tell you, I was with JSK, obvious.
Yep.
Chris Harris, Abyss, and Father James Mitchell. And it was like 3:30 in the morning in Nashville. And the cops told us if we could get a ride, they would let us go. And so next thing I know, a fucking minivan pulls up, door slides open, and it's Goldilocks from Impact. And she's like, get in. And so we all got in this fucking minivan, and she made sure we all got home.
That's a name I have not heard in forever.
Oh, she was a sweetheart. Oh, my James, or my Don West story. So we're in the bar. It's I wouldn't say that, even though Don would lead you to believe we were on a first name basis. I still think he knew when he saw us. Radio guys, he probably couldn't tell you our names. He did know what we did. He did know who we were as far as, we were a wrestling radio show. And that's why we had the access that we had. We had access that a lot of people didn't get. And a lot of people did not like us because of that. But at the same time, we knew when to turn off being the guys on the radio and turn on guys that are just there to party and have fun too. But Don met me. He didn't meet me. We just happened to meet in the bar right after Bound for Glory. And there's other wrestlers in the bar. I had been drinking earlier with Jim Cornette and, other people. But back then I could drink a lot. So I was probably still drinking. But I remember him coming up to me and we started having a conversation about, is this everything I thought it would be? Like when I got into doing a wrestling radio show, did I do it in the hopes of getting backstage access that I apparently had? Or was it more just because I enjoyed doing radio and talking to people? And I honestly never in a million years thought that it would get us to where we got with the access that we did have. I will never forget two things that have to do with wrestling and JSK, my best friend that passed away. One, how big his eyes got the first time I took him backstage at Impact, because I had already been there once.
Mhm.
He had never been backstage. So when I took him backstage through the curtain that we watched on TV every Wednesday night, his mind exploded. And I can't remember who the wrestler was. I think it was Frankie Kazarian. That was the first one to come up to him and go, "God damn, dude, where do you work?" And JSK was like, "No, I'm just here to have fun. I'm with a radio show, Wrestling News Live. Have you ever heard of us?" And Kazarian was like, "No." And he was like, "Oh, that's okay." But he didn't know. He called Frankie by the wrong name. And I went, "That's Frankie Kazarian, you dumbass." And he was like, "Oh, sorry. I'm just a little fucked up right now because I've never been backstage before." I'll never forget that moment. And James Storm, your boy James Storm again.
Yep.
The last pay-per-view was that Bound for Glory pay-per-view in Detroit. And Jody was sick. He was real bad.
You're gonna be all right. I know how close you guys were, and for anyone who doesn't know, it was. If memory serves me correct, he had a brain tumor. If memory serves me correct,
it was in his neck and his ear. Believe it or not,
oh really?
It was in his neck for years. But when they tried to cut that shit out, I was just telling this to a friend of mine the other day. It was a 9-hour surgery.
Holy
But anyway,
shit.
Jody wanted to make the trip, and we did. And so after the pay-per-view was over, he was just too weak. And he ended up going to bed or going back up to his room. And I went back down to the bar, and Storm was like, "Hey, where's Jody?" And I said, "He's not going to party, man. He's too sick from chemo. He's laying up in the bed." I said, "He barely made it through the pay-per-view." And he was like, "Well, if he can't come down here and party with us, let's take the party to him." And I was like, "That'd be fucking cool." And I remember walking into a room, and there was another wrestling radio show right behind me. Matter of fact, I outdrank this guy one night, and I won his John Cena spinner belt.
I remember you telling that story on the air. I remember you saying you couldn't get it through the airport.
Couldn't get through the airport, yeah. So we go into this room, and Jeremy Borash is at the door, and he's the bouncer for the night. He's like making sure who's supposed to be there is there, and who's not is not. And this dude, he named himself Chris Cash. I can't remember what his last fucking name was, for real. But he was a dickhead, and I always wanted to whip his ass badly. So did JSK, which just the guy was about as big around as my pinky. It was like not a fair fight for either one of us. But he was right behind me. Storm goes in, I go in. Borash goes, "What's up, man?" He shakes my hand. He goes, "All off the record tonight, brother." I said, "Dude, I'm just here to party." He goes, "That's why we love you, Trey Dog." And I walked in with James Storm, and fucking Chris Cash was right behind me. And he tried to walk in behind me, and Borash put his hand out and said, "Nope, sorry." He goes, "But I'm with them." And he goes, "No, you're not." And he goes, "Well, you let Trey in." And he said, "Yeah, we like Trey. We don't like you. Get out." And so I was like, "Hell yeah, brother."
Yeah.
So we go in this room, and it's a big banquet room at this hotel where the wrestlers were staying. And Storm goes, "All right, let's recruit some people to go up and party with JSK." I was like, "Okay." And then, of course, he goes right over to the Divas, the Knockouts. And it was like Gail Kim, Mickey James at the time. Oh, I got some Mickey James stories. Mickey James. I can't remember who else was there.
Any of the beautiful people who didn't marry with their gimmick for some reason?
No, no. And I don't think I even got to see. I don't think I. I don't think I got to see either one of them on that trip. I don't remember. But anyway, we had like 5 or 6 of the knockouts, and then it was Chris Harris, James Storm, myself, Kazarian, I think Chris Sabin, Samoa Joe, I think went. God, that's a big dude. Samoa Joe. I can't remember who else. There was a bunch of us. There was a full fucking elevator, which doesn't take a lot with some of the meatheads that were in there. But it was a full elevator. And we all went and took a bottle of Crown up to Jody's fucking room and drank a big part of it until he just was too weak. He didn't drink. Which, if that tells you anything, that's,
Yeah.
So then that was the last show. He passed away pretty quickly right after that show. So
Yeah. Actually,
I was glad he was able to go and experience that. We had some good times with that company, man. They did JSK and I right in almost every aspect.
That's awesome sauce. One of my favorite memories of you guys was, I don't remember which WrestleMania it was, but it was the one where you guys got the vending machine.
Oh, the beer vending machine, yeah.
Yep. And Jody, he was like a little kid at the candy store with that thing.
Oh, fuck yeah. You should have seen us getting that motherfucker home. That was a bunch of drunk motherfuckers hauling a fucking vending machine full of Miller Lite from Buffalo Wild Wings to my apartment in the back of a truck. Yeah, I'm surprised from a lot of things. I've got so many stories that could have ended with, and then we went to jail, but we didn't go to jail. I'm surprised.
Yeah, I meant this in the beginning. I'm going to say it again. My favorite thing about Wrestling News Live was your tagline, for the fans, by the fans.
Mm-hmm.
And especially towards the end when you guys developed the network, is right when I had to take some time off for personal reasons. Between my grandmother's health and my sight getting worse, I wasn't ready to do a podcast yet, or internet radio, or whatever you were calling it, by 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And I waited my time. I learned how to adjust to my loss of vision and take care of my grandmother until she passed. And then in 2015, when during what they deemed snowpocalypse on the East Coast that year, I couldn't get out, and I was looking at YouTube. I was like, I'm finally gonna fucking do this. So, if I get one episode, I'll do it tomorrow. If I get one viewer, I got like 3 views my first episode.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And that was just I was like, oh wow, I can use this with the adaptive equipment. I was like, sweet. I think I just basically pretended I was Edge in my opening intro for that first time, and it went back to me listening. I was like, how the fuck did I get any listeners at all?
Well, and I'm sure that and I saw earlier you got quite a few subscribers to YouTube. You got way more than I do. But the thing you can do is be a pioneer in what you do and how you do. Because I don't know the numbers, but I'm not sure there's a lot of blind podcast hosts out there. So I mean, other people.
Like I said, I always remembered the Bronx Father saying that he was sight impaired.
He was.
And I was like, okay, there's someone out there doing it. What the fuck is my excuse?
Exactly.
And now, one thing just led to another, and just like yourself, I never thought it would get me to some of the places it's gotten to me over the years. Especially, I never thought I'd be, since 2018, being at the Adult Video Awards each and every year.
I wish I could let you borrow my eyesight for that shit.
Braille system works.
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
But can you feel somebody's titties and say you need braille on their nipples, or how's that work?
Basically, it's just I got to the point where I could tell silicone from no breasts.
Now, see, that's what I need to go to the Adult Video Awards. Y'all need to hook a motherfucker up.
One day I was like, my friend of mine who helps me out buy and sell collectibles at this one convention, he's just like, why don't you just for shits and giggles fill out the press pass? I was like, yeah, what the hell? And I got approved, and I've been going ever since.
I was going to say, I don't know how that works, but I think I know some people that might also be involved in that. I don't know. I don't want to say any names. I think they might be. But still, the fact remains that I've never been, and I think I need to go. I think I need to go to the Adult Video Awards.
Yeah, you would have a blast.
I think they would love me there.
That they would. Yeah. What advice would you get? You first, sir.
No, I was gonna say, look at the eye for talent that I've had. Like I picked the fabulous Bam, one of our first ever co-hosts, straight from being a caller. Adam was a caller. I picked his ass up while he was in high school and made him a part of the show. And he's married with kids, and we're still podcasting together. We just did a show Saturday.
Oh wow!
So that's the newsy announcement that I've got for you is that, according to Adam, I'm okay with saying this. We are going to try. I started a new Wrestling News Live 2.0 TikTok today. A new TikTok account for Wrestling News Live 2.0. Nice. The band is back together. Adam and I are going to be live after AEW Collision on Saturday nights.
Sweet.
And if he can't be there, then I'll be there.
Punk show?
The new CM Punk show, yes. Yep. We were live last Saturday, so yeah.
What did you guys think of the new Collision and CM Punk dropping a very light pipe bomb?
I loved it.
It was a little underwhelming, in my opinion.
I loved the show. Everything that they did, though, if you think that was just CM Punk spur of the moment, that was all pre-planned, pre-approved. They've gotten to a point now where they're going to try to make money off of all this, and God bless them, they should. I wonder how things are going to work. I do not like Hangman Adam Page, and I think some of the things that he did are what led to that's kind of what got all of this bullshit going. So we'll see how it goes. I don't see how you keep a guy like CM Punk off of Dynamite. You can keep the Elite off Collision. You can do that. I just don't see how you keep CM Punk off of Dynamite.
And I'm just hoping eventually it leads to, the Elite versus CM Punk in some way, shape, and form.
It will.
CM Punk.
It will.
Winds up becoming the leader of the Black Combat Club, or
no, they need to keep him away from shit like that. But I could honestly see CM Punk in a fucking heel turn at some point. But I do like his new "Tell Me When I'm Telling Lies." I do love that.
Yeah, I thought that was great.
So,
like I said, as far as a WWE standpoint, is there anything there that you're digging nowadays?
Not really. I've kept up a little bit with the Bloodline. I thought that the way they did the Usos leaving the Bloodline, I thought that was cool. I really did. I liked how they did that. I think with anything good, there has to come an ending, and it's time to put that shit to bed. How do they go about it? I don't know. I really thought at one point you would see Rikishi come back on TV and try to right the ship. And you still might. That's still not out of the blue, because I'm sure that Roman and the Usos are going to fight. They're going to continue to fight. I love how Jay was conflicted. They played up the whole thing, and then he walks by and sees Sami Zayn sitting there, and Sami looks at him like, Told you so, motherfucker. And he gets up and walks away. I thought that was cool. Like, I don't watch the shows at all. But if there is something that I like if it's something that might involve Alexa Bliss's ass, I will watch that clip.
As long as there's no creepy dolls along with Alexa Bliss.
She can do whatever the fuck she wants, though. She gets a free ride to do whatever the fuck she wants.
I know, that dog creeped me out. That dog creeped.
I thought that they were going to do more with, like, The Rock's. Was it The Rock's niece or The Rock's daughter that's
it's
in
The Rock's daughter that just got NXT or something?
I thought they would do something with her in the bloodline, and they still might. They still need to do something better with Solo. I think he's got more room to grow. Obviously, he's still fresh and greener than goose shit. So there's room to do things there still. And then there's the Paul Heyman factor. I mean, there comes a point in time where, he's going to need to get beat on and beat up and thrown out. And then where's he going to go? And who's going to come to his aid? Will it be Brock? Who knows? So if I see things on YouTube or if I hear things, I will, if I see something on Twitter, oh, did you see so-and-so? And I'll go, that might be interesting. Then I'll click and watch it. But what you're not going to get on our show is a lot of WWE talk because we're just WWE'd out. And Adam knows nothing about AEW. Like, this was his first show from start to finish. So it's really fun for me to educate.
What did Professor Martin think?
He liked it. He enjoyed it. He gave it a higher grade. I think he gave it an 8, and I gave it a 7.5.
Yeah, I was about a 6 myself.
I started to go 6, and I thought that might be too low.
I don't. Maybe
but there's room.
Changed their commentating team. Because when you're a visually impaired wrestling fan, for me, I don't know how this was ever blind and visually impaired people who are wrestling fans, but commentating team is key for me.
Right. And what did you think of the Saturday night team?
Let's see. Now I have a hard time understanding Nigel a lot, and every now and then Kevin Kelly was flubbing lines and intros every now and then. So maybe I just have to get used to them because it's not like a Wednesday night. I mean, it's Taz. And
do you like Wednesday night's team?
I love Wednesday night's team.
See, I do too, and I think we're on an island. I keep hearing people complain about God damn my brain.
Let's see, it's Wednesday nights. It's Taz, and
it's not Taz, the masked guy. Who's the masked announcer?
Is that it's not Shivani, it's the other dude whose name that's mistaking me right now too.
It's gonna fucking hit me as soon as we're done. God damn it. Anyway, people hate that guy. And I think he's great, although they hate him. My only beef with that guy is that he tries to spit out too much information too fast, and then he gets winded. Excalibur, that's his fucking name.
Yeah.
And then he'll spit out too much. And it's like, okay, chill the fuck out, man. Shut up.
See, what I like about Wednesday nights, it's a little bit of WCW.
Yeah, I think Taz is great.
And Taz, I think, would make a killer stand-up comedian.
Maybe.
I met Taz once in real life, and I thanked him for his years of entertainment, and I had my one beef with him at that point.
Was?
It was the whole. He did that little storyline he did with Jerry King Lawler like a long time ago, where he walked out with the "Seeing Eye Can."
Oh yeah.
And I was like, and he laughed and he giggled and he signed a cane for me.
Well, there you go.
So it was cool, and so you got a little bit of a WWE, classic WWE, and then Excalibur has that fresh take on it.
Yeah, I like them. All right, what else you got for me, man? I'm starting to get hungry. I gotta get the hell out of here.
Well, at the end, I just we're pretty much done. I really just want to say thank you so much for everything. And
you're welcome.
Thank you for the memories, and this was like a real get for me.
Well, I appreciate you making me feel important, man. I miss the good old days. I wish JSK were still here to be a part of the new Wrestling News Live rebrand that we're trying to pull off.
And is it exclusively on TikTok or?
No. We started up the TikTok today, but we're using my Kick page and my Twitch page, and then the WrestleViews YouTube page. Now I don't know how long we'll have access to WrestleViews YouTube, but they gave it to us for the opening debut show. We are still in the process of really putting all the details together, but I know that we will be, at least if nothing else, at the worst, Adam and I will both be on my Kick channel and my Twitch channel, and it's both just Tray Dog w.n.l, just like it's spelt right here.
Nice.
So I mean TREYWA or TREYDAWGWNL, and you can find me at twitch.com/that and kick.com/that. So we will be at both places.
Nice. And
if he's not there, I will be.
Yep. And once again, I thank you for everything. And, everyone please follow the Tray Dog and Kick and Twitch. And, definitely the new Wrestling News Live 2.5 at this point.
Yeah, it feels like it. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me. I'm glad that, all the stupidity and all the things that we did, all the shows that we did, there were millions of them, it feels like at this point. But, it's good now that I feel like people actually, it meant something to them. Like I said, I still get messages in my Twitter DMs and my Facebook messages, and it makes this old man's heart that's, had better days already, feel even better when somebody says, hey man, we listened to your show and it got me through some serious shit or some dark times or some, it was just funny or it was just entertaining, or my family and I listen, my dad and I've had it all. I've heard it all from listeners, and every time it just makes me smile, makes me happy, and, makes me proud of the job we did at the end of the day.
Yes. And, you have yourself a great night.
You as well, sir.
And we'll definitely be in touch. You have an open invitation to, for me to talk one more avenue of entertainment that I don't get to talk a lot here on the show.
Well, I will promise you this. I know your nights and I know your times and I know where to find you, so I will do my best to pop in and surprise you from time to time.
Thank you so much, man. And to everyone out there, remember, you don't need sight to have a vision. It's not what happens to what you do about it. I love you all. Blind Adam out.
Peace.
And this is where I gotta do that. That's there.
Edit broadcast and broadcast button enter live on. Not yet button.